So welcome everyone today. Today we are joined by one fantastic producer and three fantastic sommeliers. So this conversation will be in a word of in a theme of Weingut Prieler with Georg Prieler, the main winemaker and the head of the house, I believe, that will represent the house. And we will be joined by three sommeliers. Ladies first, we have Linda Karpenko, who represents the John restaurant. So actually a new hotel and a restaurant that we will be opening up in like a few, I think, weeks, or maybe even open already now. So Robert's Branson's representing White House Restaurant. And the third one is Ivo Orlos representing Choice Bar and Wine Shop in Jurmala. Yeah, so we have three different stylistics of restaurants, three different types of characters, I must say, because I've drank some wine together with all of them, and they have special and unique characteristics for each of them. And just to make a small intro, our relationship with Georg started like 5 years ago, I think in one wine exhibition. But after a year or so, I think well-known sommelier Raymond Thompsons, which won the European Championship, won it in Austria, and we had to celebrate by visiting Georg. And so I think a special bond was, came up between Noble Wine and Weingut Prieler. So welcome, and I'm going to give the reins over to the three sommeliers, so they will try to take all the information out of you and talk about the house, what's happening now, the history, and what will happen in the future in Austria and with your wines as well. So I'm giving the reins over to you guys. I'm going to log off, and then I will join at the end of the conversation. Yeah?
All right.
Roberts, Georg is all yours.
Thank you. I think I will start, I suppose. I'm just wondering, I think it's no exaggeration to say that today the chances of getting poorly made wine are lower in Austria than in any other place in the world. Do you agree with that? And what is your comment about why is that?
Oh, yes, for sure. I mean, Austria in general, we are not manager, we are hand workers. Hand workers means that we keep in touch with our wines, with our grapes, with our wine, and we are more like artists. So we're taking decisions step by step. I think when you want to represent your vineyard, it's a logical consequence to start in the vineyard and to go more and more in that way to bring out the pureness of the vineyard. To see which vineyard can shine, which shows more fruitiness, which shows more intensity. So I think it's a huge step, which is important for the freshness, and of course to see what's really in your vineyards going on. If you make a blend, you go to a different way. You make a lot of diversity of wines. And then at the end, you blend it together how you personally like it for your customers. So it's a different way of doing that. So it's a logical consequence for us hand workers from Austria to go more and more into pureness.
Okay.
I have a quick question before we get to the next one regarding the fact that you say that you are hand workers. How about the relationships between other winemakers? I know that when we visited you, you told that all of the rest of the winemakers around your region, you're all friends, you know each other, right? You work together as well. So yeah. How about that?
It's absolutely, you know, I mean, what brings best people together than wine in general? So it's like a freedom activity. It's like having a house, you're not having only one painting inside, you have a few artists. And that's, I think, a very important thing. And as long as you take an open conversation, and there's so much interesting things for winemakers to talk to each other about that. With a glass of wine, you meet them in the vineyards. When you work at one rose and there comes the neighbor and he works as well in the same vineyard. So you go like the same speed and you talk the whole day together. It's something that we winemakers come so close. And of course, we have all the same freedom activity, eating and drinking. So this is a nice thing. So we don't see us as competition. We see us much more as in a small living Austrian wine country that we have to hold together to bring out the complexity that Austria offers.
Awesome.
Cool.
Should I go forward? Yes.
Yeah.
Sure.
Great. So now a question about basically some of the challenges that you as a winemaker face regarding winemaking and wine growing. Couple of parts of the questions are: did you also had some of the lower temperatures that some of other countries faced in April? And how did you manage that? And then I'll ask the second part a little bit later.
The luckiest thing is, I mean, we had the cool temperature in April, but the good thing is that we are today, this year, in growing back about 3 weeks than last year. That means when we had the temperature, there was nothing to freeze. That was the huge advantage. I remember in 2016, when we was in May in 2016, at the moment, our vineyards look like that. There's such a little green out. And when I remember, for example, when we had the frost in 2016, it was like this. So 3 times longer. As soon as you see the grapes coming, grapes, let me say, I'm sorry, I don't know so good the English word for that, but as soon as you see it and it's going to freeze, then there's a danger. As long as you don't see it, it's not a danger at all. That was a very lucky situation, thankfully.
Do you have any problems to achieve phenolic ripeness at the end of the growing season?
We have the problems more the other way around, that you could say that it's getting riper and riper, and we have to think about how we can manage that. For example, last year I didn't have a brand new idea. I just happened, luckily. You know, you always have to take the good sides. For example, last year I had doubled my hand harvest team, because I thought, okay, if one is getting sick at the one side, I still have a second one, just in case. Yep. So I said I invested money and double it. And it was one of the best decisions always taken, because we have 80% of our whole winery is Pinot Blanc and Blaufränkisch. When this is getting ripe, you know, there's just a few days or hours between. So we actually have to hurry up. And we started at the beginning of September with outside temperatures of 26 degrees during the day. So 26 October, 5 days for ripeness, where it's cool. So ripeness is getting fast. And this is something that it tends to get too fast over ripeness in the phenolic ripeness. So in that case, of course, you have to harvest them quite quickly. And with the double team, we could manage it very good. On the other side, of course, you try to reduce the growing in the vineyard. That means if the vineyard grows too much, so always leaves comes and you have to cut everything, then you get a very highly sugar degradation. The phenolic ripeness can't manage it to come up. So at the end of the ripeness, you get like sugar degradation like this, and phenolic like just at the beginning. So you try to bring them much more in balance. It's not only a thing of organic or biodynamic, it's a thing at all that you should change in the vineyards. I think that's something that the last years we saw more and more. It's better to harvest one day too early than late in case of the phenolic ripeness. And it also gives my idea of the varieties I need, that I did the correct choose with Blaufränkisch and Pinot Blanc, because Blaufränkisch and Pinot Blanc always, it's not getting too high in alcohol level. It always keeps it moderated with the physiological ripeness and with the phenolic. So we are getting the skins anyway ripe. We just have to take care about the fruit balance.
Are there any other challenges that you face? Some other problems or challenges that you face regarding wine growing?
In the wine growing, what we really see is that it's getting drier and drier. That makes it harder for the wines. You know, when you start pruning, you need not too rich oak, but not too less oak on the oak. I'm sorry, on the wine. So it don't has to be like this. And it don't has to be like this. It has to be the middle part. And when it's raining, less and less raining, it's getting smaller, smaller, and smaller. And so you have to say, okay, I need some part of growing, but not too much. That means you're working with huge amount of compost and different compost. So it's not about only cow shit, horse shit, making compost about it. It's also about green to make compost. It gives you a good phosphor. And this is something very important to the diversity of the composts to have. To keep the good water regulation, I think something, the weather extreme and the drier, which makes it in the future not easier, but also not hard. It makes it just different.
But you don't irrigate the vineyards, right?
No, I'm not a big fan of that, honestly. I mean, I was trained in it. I did vintages out of Austria where I saw it, but I always saw the wines, my opinion, my personal opinion. I think I want to let grow. I want old wines. If you want old wines, you need strong wines. If you need strong wines, you have, when they are young, not to irrigate, because otherwise they break down. They keep on living and break down later on. And if I plant a vineyard, I lose like 30% of the vines that I've planted. But the 70%, the strong ones, I replant on the next year on these parts of the 30%, and then I have just the strong ones. That's why I don't really, I'm a big fan. As long as we don't need it, we don't do it. I think there's a different way of dealing with it.
All right.
Georg, sorry, what is your glass of wine?
Oh, I can choose. I might start with the rosé, because Linda and we was talking just a second before, and the rosé is actually quite a good question that I myself asked myself in 2004. If our region produces such mineralic and full of vibration white wines and such authentic red wines, why should we not able to produce outstanding rosés with pureness, with minerality, with complexity? And so in 2004, I remember I bought a huge amount of rosés all over the world, but honestly at this time there was not lot of good ones. I remember, just that I really remember, I loved the wines from Bandol in Provence. So where they had the saltiness, the slightly citric, and I saw, okay, in our region, I have to find a vineyard which is planted with red wine grapes on a white wine vineyard site. So actually a farmer who did a miss. And if I find it, I have to buy it. And we found it of an old farmer in the village, and he had a Blaufränkisch vineyard, which is 60, 70 years old. And he was so kind that we anyway wanted to stop. So he sold me the vineyard. And I remember the first rosé that I made in 2004, it was tasty like a Burgundian. So it has this creaminess, this citric, this salty, nearly like Meursault saltiness. It was just directly pressed. But honestly, I was my best customer. Yes. Everybody wanted to have a rosé, wanted to have some more fruity and freshness in it. So, okay, I thought, okay, I have to make a compromise between myself as a wine freak and the person who enjoys with me the glass of wine. So nowadays, when you taste the 2019, like Linda has, it's just about 100% of Blaufränkisch to 2019. And it's 1 part directly pressed from old wines and 2 parts Sanier from younger wines, but from great vineyard sites. So from up on the hill. So there's a little bit of Sanier of Marienthal and Goldberg or Single Grüß. That's why you also have this structure, this complexity in the rosé. I love to have it, for example, as an aperitif, just simply, because you can surprise the people. Because when you offer a glass of rosé, everybody thinks, okay, is it sweet? Is it sour? Is it like a cocktail kind of the fruitiness? And then you surprise them with a fantastic glass of wine, which offers you a fabulous drinkability, a fruitiness, but not too over fruity. So he makes space for the next wine, honestly. So that's why we are not bottling October or November after harvest. We normally bottle like March, April. And until that time, it stays on the hard lees. It's quite reductive and stinky when it's my cellar, but it's leaving in the bottle quite opened and enjoyable.
Actually, you touched a bit of the subject about minerality, and I think Ivo had a good question regarding the minerality. So maybe Ivo can proceed with that one.
Yeah, I have prepared one question about, I think this is more like philosophy question about minerality, because many sommeliers, wine producers, merchants, and wine lovers quite often use this term minerality, okay, and when describe the wine. But at the same time, many got confused about what exactly minerality means. What minerality means for you for red and for white wines? Because because minerality cannot be scientifically proven. Yeah, so
it's a difficult word, and for me, is minerality also authentic? That means if you find in a wine something that it's hard to find in different wines, that you don't really often find. That means, for example, our minerality, our face of our wines, our authentic, comes from the soil, which is, for example, chalky limestone, where you have a combination of citric, salty acidity. This is for me a kind of minerality. I think in the nose, to find out the minerality, it's quite hard, because the nose is always a little bit of the soul of the winemaker. So if he likes it, you know, cooler, warmer, it reflects the soul of the winemaker. The authentic character, you are more reflected on the palate. So when you find something that you can't really often find, this is a point for me of minerality. To fix it on a special aroma, it's quite hard for me, honestly, you know, because fixing an aroma is always, if I think about walnut, maybe you think about a different walnut.
Yeah.
So this is something, Flintstones, you could say, yeah, but Flintstone notes can also come from adductiveness. So for me, it's always a hard thing to say which one would be the correct for minerality. But for sure, I would say it's something that you not so often taste it in different wines. This is a point of personality and minerality.
Okay.
Cool.
That answers Ival's question?
Yeah, yeah, sure.
I have a really small question in between the rest of them about the vineyard, the old vineyard that you bought for the rosé. What's the soil in it? Because you said it's a vineyard planted with red wines in a white wine soil, in a white vineyard soil. What's the soil in there?
It's the chalky limestone.
Sorry, yeah.
It's in the vineyard side Seeberg. Actually, it's in the vineyard side Neugebirge, so just beside Seeberg. So this is the, you know, in my village in Schützen, it's called Seeberg. In Ocker, it's called Neugebirge, but it's side by side. It's just the name of the different village. So there are actually two main soils in our region. There's one side, the chalky limestone that I just had about a second before. And on the other side, you have this schist soil. But if you like, I can shortly show you the vineyard, because as a farmer, found out this fantastic technology, Google Earth. Because I know my vineyards, I can easily try to show you where it is. Oh, is it correct? No, here we go. So, of course, there's Austria, Latvia. So we come closer to our region now. And you see here's Hungary, there is Austria. And we are close to this lake. It's the biggest flat lake of Central Europe.
Noisy
and
there.
you exactly go closer and closer. There is my village, and all our vineyards are up here. Around the Schützener Stein, and goes up to here to this fantastic vineyard site. For example, Marienthal.
Where we were the last time we visited, yeah.
Oh yeah, we were the. And when you come closer, you see already Seeberg here, and around here is the vineyard. And about chalky limestones, for example, this is one vineyard of us where you see actually how white it is. It's like chalk. You can see all over here, it's chalk. And when you just walk over, this is the single vineyard Steinweingarten. When you just walk over to our Goldberg, Blaufränkisch, you have more or less schist. So it's like jumping from Chablis to Côte-Rôtie within a few meters. And for example, the red wine that Robert has in his glass comes original from here. I recognize this because this is the vineyard where it comes from. It's the sensitive part of Marienthal, where you have more gambling of aromas, more elegance. We use this vineyard for the Leithaberg wine to represent Blaufränkisch on an authentic way. And when you see how white it is, it's all about chalky limestone that comes through. And this is something that is in our, I was just yesterday in the vineyards, you know, and in the vineyards, between the roses, you have to place this to cut it inside and to kill it. And it's like crazy. After 10 centimeters, I already got the rocks. So no chance to deal with it. So I had to squeeze inside to get it in. And you see really how highly actually the rocks are in our vineyards. And so how hard it is for the roots when they are young to pressure through in that case. So this, for example, where there's the Leithaberg vineyard for the Blaufränkisch.
So you can say that it's stylistically quite similar like Côte Rôtie, like Côte de Blonde, like regarding the soil type.
For the whites, it's more for Côte Rôtie, it's more the schist side. For the reds, so red mostly the schist on the reds, and on the white side you have mostly chalky limestone, honestly, because we are quite medium balanced in acidity. Yeah. When you taste the wine of the Leithaberg Pinot Blanc, I think even you're having vintage 2015, if I remember right. 15 was in general a warm vintage, but the warm vintage also shows perfectly how we are used to manage warm vintages, because a good joke of a friend of mine from Germany, he's a famous winemaker in Germany, and I remember I was talking with him about vintage 2010, and I said, oh my God, we have so much acidity in our region. And he said, how much do you have? I said, we normally have with Pinot Blanc about 6, and now we have 6.5. And he said, are you kidding me? We normally have 12, and now we have 17. So he said, what you call acidity, we call measure tolerance. So I saw that actually in our region, it's not about the analytic part of acidity, that the freshness we actually get at one side from the chalky limestones, but also on the other side, we have the tradition for skin maturation. That means that we normally, also already my grandfather did it. He left it in the press for 1 or 2 days on the skins before he pressed it gently. Nowadays, of course, we do it much more professional than we used to do. So that means that we destem it, we do it cooled. We use no sulfur for leaving it on the skin. So it's a point of just it's a point of more professional of the very certain thing. So that's why when you taste our Pinot Blanc, for example, the Leithaberg, you will feel on the palate a little bit like green tannins, so green tea tannins. Like when you have a very good green tea and perfectly made, not from me, then you have this slightly perfection of tannin texture. And that's the same that very often people feel in our Pinot Blanc. So you have this green tea tannin texture, and then there comes a citric salty acidity at the back end, which makes it, I suppose, that what sommeliers said me, that makes it quite food friendly. So that it's a bit easier to pair.
Okay, nice. And if you don't mind, maybe we can touch a bit the history of winemaking in Burgenland. Maybe you can just describe it in a few words regarding the modern winemaking history in Burgenland, and maybe how your winemaking techniques right now regarding aging, maceration, fermentation differ from the things maybe your grandfather did, and maybe from people even before him. So what has changed, what has stayed the same, and regarding grapes, everything. Maybe you can just in a few brief words tell us about that.
We have another 2 hours, huh?
Can take a longer time, probably. Yeah.
No. First of all, you know, we are Austrian Hungarians in Burgenland. Burgenland was one time Austria, one time Hungarian. So we are always open for something new. But I think at one point, in general, for me personally, and what I also feel that our winemakers collect, is tradition is something very important for us, but it should be not the excuse for being lazy to try something new. Only if you tried something, you can say, okay, it's better or it does not help me. I think when I look at my grandfather, that my grandfather made use of the possibilities he had. That means he bought the newest press, which makes it a little bit more gently. He hired one or two persons more in the vineyard to select a little bit more. So the tradition was actually always in general in our region was open fermentation for the red wines, for the Blaufränkisch. Badly destamped. That means some whole bunches, punched down by hand and not too long on the skins, only 2 or 3 weeks. That's the red wine. For the white wines, the tradition was always skin maturation. That means to select the grapes, to do it in the press or in a bottle, and then ferment it inside sometimes. So let it a little bit ferment and then press it during fermentation. That's a part of tradition in our region. When my father came in the 70s, 80s, it was a revolution of red wine all over the world. It was the time of Onelaya, Sasigaya. So the whole world planted the same varieties to show that this country produces as good wines as the rest of the world does, which makes sense. That showed that, okay, we can produce as good wines. We have the motivation, we can buy the technology to produce the good wine. So it was the time where there come the brand new barriques, small barriques, toasted, long skin maturation. They made Blaufränkisch like Cabernet Sauvignon. Nowadays we wouldn't do that, but at this time maybe it was the right time to show to the people that we should also get attention. Then there was the last revolution of red wine, which was very important. It came back to the roots. It showed the authentic notes of Blaufränkisch. That means it's changing actually backwards. So people kicked out the barriques and changed back to the old vessels that you used, the big wooden cask, the 500-liter barrels, Austrian oak, not too long on the skins, based on the gambling of aromas more than on the amount of tannins. So this was a huge change in the brain. For me personally, in the world of red wines, I have two phases. I have one tannic phase, which comes from, for example, if you take a Bordeaux, you know, it's you make a point on the quality of the tannins, on the texture, on the complexity, and as long as you age, as soft it gets. And you have the second phase of red wines of the cool climate red wine. That means, for example, like Piemont, Côte d'Or, Burgundy, Cabernet Franc, Loire, Spätburgunder Deutschland, Austria, Blaufränkisch. So it's more based on acidity than on tannin. More than like Bordeaux on, let me say, Valrhona chocolate tannins. So the high class chocolate tannins. That means when you age it, it's getting softer, but it's also getting more in harmony and in balance than softer. You have a better basement of acidity. So when you look at these wines, you look more to gambling of fruit aromas, you look to acidity, tannin, harmony, balance, of fruit complexity. So it's more that way. So it was not the right way to go to the Bordeaux way, to go for tannins. It's more the way of keeping the coolness that you get offer. And Burgenland has at the moment an unbelievable open door. There is no need of chaptalization, of acidity, of nothing. It's just an open door of perfection of climate that we have at the moment. So now we have to be very motivated because we can make the perfect research on which single vineyard brings out the most complexity on the wines without the winemaker giving too much of himself into the wines. So to get a little bit backwards. So we actually learned that if a wine is stinky, it's not the matter that it's stinky, it's just the matter how much time you have. That's a huge question. You know, when I'm in the cellar, I just tasted yesterday a wine which was very reductive. So it was really stinky. And I said, it's amazing structure. And somebody asked me, what do you think? And I said, well, it's for me more a barrel sample. Even if I love the wine, I love the structure. But in the nose, it was for me more a barrel sample because it smells like my wines at home in the cellar. It's just about stinky. But I said, okay, I have to age it in a few more years in the bottle. Not a problem at all. But the structure was fantastic. So I think it's the new The newest thing that comes for is that we winemakers offers the wines more space. That means we invested in buildings to do late bottlings, to do late releases, to do longer aging in big wooden casks. Most of my colleagues keep on buying also the big wooden cask, like we also as well. So you're getting actually, you're reacting to the point also that it's getting warmer. So you need less oxidation, you need more compactness. That's a huge step for me personally that I see in the future. And of course, different than my grandfather, what changed total is my grandfather said, as later you harvest, as better the wines. Nowadays, it's not the truth. That's a huge change that you have to make as a winemaker in your brain. When you grew up with this sentence, trained in the school for this sentence, then you come to the winery and say, okay, that was all bullshit. But it's always good when as a winemaker you do some vintages out of Austria, because only when you work something different, you see what you have at home.
Okay.
So a global warming plays a big role now.
It's a role, absolutely. It's a role of drier and warmer. But I said, you can also take the advantage of it. I remember when I was a child and there was harvest, we was harvesting Blaufränkisch at the mid to the end of October. That means I was totally wet. It was foggy in the morning, you know, some grapes was sick, so you have to sort a lot. So everything was wet and at the same time stinky. When we harvest nowadays, we harvest like I did it in New Zealand, flip-flops, short trousers, perfectly ripe grapes, constantly phenolic ripeness all over the grapes, and not that you have on the back green, on the front yellow for the whites, or for the reds, dark red and not dark red. So you have constantly ripeness all over the grape. That's a huge advantage. So now we have the open door, but if it's getting warmer and warmer, it's not getting easier and better. It's getting more harder for us, honestly.
So everything sounds positive regarding that.
Yeah. Yeah.
A question, what did your family do before they were making wines, before winemaking? And how they decided to do that?
I mean, we saw back 5 generations that my family lives from making wine. I mean, there was a hard time between 1914 and 1945 where you sold the wine, but you also needed a horse, you needed cows, porks to live from something, to have enough to eat. But as I'm not sure what my family did before making wine, because it's the generations that we saw back, they always drank wine. But I heard from a long history that we was original the fighters. But I think we was better in drinking than in fighting. That's why we became winemaker. Maybe we just took care of the fighters. That could also be, you know, fighters sounds better. But when you translate Schützen am Gebirge, word by word in English, it means the guardians of the mountains. So it was originally the fighters for the noble bloods. But, you know, this is nothing fixed. This is just given from generation to generation, you know, and it's getting better and better by generation.
Okay. So usually just drinking and fighting just goes together perfectly, especially
I'm more trained in drinking and sleeping.
right thing to do. So maybe Linda, you can proceed.
Yes. I was just finishing refilling my glass. The question is about Blaufränkisch and also Pinot Blanc, about their image and how the image has grown in the past few years, knowing that you know, the wine consumer knowledge about region-specific grape varieties has grown, and also how the export has grown. Maybe you can comment on that.
In export, I mean, in our winery, my father was quite smart, because in the revolution of red wine at the 80s, 90s, everybody wanted from Burgenland just red wines, every Austrian customer. So my father saw only chance to keep the old wines for Pinot Blanc to start to export it. So our first export country was England, that we exported in the beginning of the 90s. At this time, it was Austria was not famous at all, more the opposite way. But they told us if we write down Pinot Blanc on the label, we get people to taste the wines, and when they taste the wines, they love it. I remember when I was my first traveling in 2005, I was traveling to the United States. Nowadays, we have half of our wines are exported and half of the wines are in the country. I always have a look that it's quite balanced between that, export and import. We have 17 different export countries, and in every country we have always a personal importer. So it's not about a huge one, it's more a fine wine importer which understands the handcrafted wines. It's important for me. And when I traveled first time in 2005, 2006, I came back home to my father and I said, if we ever sell any bottle of red wine out of Austria, I would be very surprised, because at this time everybody was drinking huge red wines. And we was just telling about Pinot Blanc in the export. And I did a vintage in 2008 in Argentina, and I remember I could only carry one bottle with me, so I took the strongest one as a young winemaker. So I took a Blaufränkisch single vineyard Goldberg of our winery, vintage 2003, hot vintage, 14 alcohol. I thought, this is power, this is energy. And we had after 1 month a barbecue, and we opened up all the wines. You know, the bottles got heavier, the winemakers got broader. And I opened up at the end the Goldberg, and I thought, okay, now I show you what's power, Austrian power. And it was so delicate and fine. It was nearly Burgundian texture, so that I saw actually that we communicate the wrong way. We should not talk about intensity and tannins and everything. We should talk about finesse and elegance. And that was also the time that Blaufränkisch came the revolution, that they said, okay, Blaufränkisch is it's about a fine wine. Please pay attention to the finesse. Treat it like a Burgundy and don't treat it like a Bordeaux. This was revolution. And suddenly the export between Pinot Blanc and Blaufränkisch rise nearly over Pinot Blanc within 5 years, and we sold more Blaufränkisch than Pinot Blanc. So people ask me much more for Blaufränkisch than Pinot Blanc. Nowadays, it's very balanced. So it's about the amount. Pinot Blanc and Blaufränkisch the same. I see a huge, the last years, a huge reaction to Pinot Blanc, because people try to combine the minerality of Riesling with the creaminess of Chardonnay. And Pinot Blanc is the one that can offer you the minerality of Chardonnay. And Pinot Blanc is for me the Riesling under the Burgundy variety. So he can offer that. That's why there's becoming more and more request for Pinot Blanc at the moment, because they try to get the same minerality, but the drinkability different. So that it's not too heavy and not too overfloating you. So in kind of export, I see it also for my colleagues, especially the colleagues which goes more down to earth to the wines, getting more and more in export. I think that's a huge step for us Austrians.
Amazing.
Okay.
It's actually, you are.
Yeah, but what about sparkling wines? Because people still perceive Austria as a white wine country, but in recent years we see increasing production of rosé, red, and of course there is no doubt that you have great potential for a classic method sparkling wine. What we should expect in the nearest future in this regard?
I think every region gets his perfection at the moment. So for example, especially for sparkling wines, there's the new pyramid in Austria, which is made for sparkling wines for reserve category. So especially I see a huge revolution for sparkling wines, not for example, Bründelmeier, Kamptal region, which makes fantastic, and they're getting better and better year by year. So in our region, I see that Blaufränkisch becomes this famousness also in request. So I think that in the world of wine, let me describe it a little bit different. The world of wine, you know, you have this absolutely alternative wines. You have fine wines and you have commercial wines. While Austria was, of course, at the 80s, 90s, more fine wines commercial. Nowadays, it's more fine wines alternative, more in that way. And I think this is changing more and more. So when you taste wines, it don't has to show you only one aroma, it has to show a few aromas. And better one to less and more different aromas than one in front. I think that's a huge step that goes. And of course, in Austria in general, we are organic certificated. More and more wineries are getting organic certificated and up to biodynamic, it's up to the winemaker. That's something for the future. I think we Austrians, we all are out in the vineyards and we have a feeling what the vineyards need. It's not about, first of all, to sell the wines, it's first of all to treat the vineyards. And then it's a result.
Mhm.
I think that's part for the future that Austria getting more and more. So more perfection in their own region.
I just wanted to add, as I'm enjoying a glass of this, your beautiful Blaufränkisch from Leithaberg. So it's quite easy to see why it's gaining popularity in the world, because like I'm a big lover of Northern Rhone wines, and if you love Côte tea or Hermitage, for example, then you can easily convert to these wines. And as well, if you're a Burgundy lover, if you like Pinot, but with more concentration and spiciness, then stylistically, this is the thing to go next to. So it's easy to convert people who love French classics to a wine like this. So it's really beautiful.
I absolutely agree. So if people ask me, how could I compare Blaufränkisch to which one? I said, you can compare it to many varieties. You just have to take a few elements, like when you have Blaufränkisch, like from the vintage Leithaberg 2016 that you have, where you have this spicy, this warm blood notes, this slightly earthy character on the palate. It's absolutely, you could say, I wouldn't compare it to Syrah, I would more compare it to a region of Alpine influence, cool climate, so like Côte d'Or. If I have it on chalky limestone, and if I have, for example, the same wine from the 17th vintage, I would more go in like the finesse and the gambling of aromas with this fresh aromas, not less spicy of Burgundy. And some, for example, if you have it on clay in a different wine region than ours, Middle Burgenland, you could also compare it a little bit with Nebbiolo, with the tannin acidity texture. So there's a few variety that actually, but it's not only the varieties, it's much more the cool climate region that I would compare than the variety itself. And these elements who comes through.
So it's compared as well to like a really high level Barbera, for example, from Piemonte.
True, from the fruity character, absolutely.
Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, Linda had a question regarding your future plans.
Yes.
Winery.
What I was interested in knowing, what are your plans for the future? Are you maybe experimenting with any other grape varieties, or have you thought about possibly making Rusted Outbruch in the future, knowing that it's one of the pioneers, and I mean regarding your region overall? And are there any interesting things coming in the future from your side?
From my side, if I go backwards from the cellar on, I have now found, finally, after investing a huge amount of money in bullshit, a perfect second phase of a material where I can age the wines. So my idea of the materials where I age the wine is that it's not allowed of the material, like a barrel, to influence the wine by the barrel. It's just about how it breathes and how it gets different in that case. And so work with amphora, first of all for the whites, but not to ferment inside, just to not to ferment with skins inside, just that skin maturation before, but the same wine to ferment in stainless steel tank, in oak barrel, and in amphora. The amphora itself brings the amazing salty citric character on front. That's a huge advantage. So it brings out of just a lime. If you do schist, if you do, for example, a Pinot Blanc from schist vineyard inside, it just tastes shit. It's just oxidized and done. But from limestone vineyard side, it's amazing. This is something. In case of varieties, I see varieties more like a tool. I want to bring out the vineyard, and at the moment it works with Pinot Blanc fantastic. The only variety that would interest me very much would be Furmint. That's a point for the future, especially for the acidity. But first of all, we need great selections back again, because Furmint has different phases. Yeah, like Pinot Blanc. If you take Pinot Blanc from Alsace, and you take, for example, the selection over there, it's mostly the Paul Choufret Cross Pinot Blanc selection. It's a little bit bigger, made to make a fantastic drinkability table wine. And in our region, Pinot Blanc, always people paid most of the money for the Pinot Blancs. So that's why the selection is smaller. The same is for Furmint. Then you have to get back the good selections, the small one. There's some small one and some big one. And I think that's something very interesting. In case of sweet wines, I always push myself to open up more and more sweet wines. But the sweet wines that I love to have, beside, of course, my Austrian colleagues, is Prémétrie from Loire. So when there comes to fresh botrytis, where you have on Chenin Blanc, this freshness, the point. But Prémétrie, Loire, as you know, is made every few years. So when it happens. For Ruster Ausbruch, it's an icon. It's something very traditional, which we should push ourselves to keep it. But you have to be in Rust.
Yeah, the grapes has to come from the territory of Rust, right? That's what I read, and that also was the question. Yeah.
Yeah, that's just about. So in my opinion, I can't make really a Ruster Ausbruch. But I like to enjoy sweet wines with less residual sugar, but it's just my personal opinion on that point. Maybe if I get a vineyard in Rust, I would for sure do it just because I think it's a thing that you should do when you have a vineyard in Rust on the right side for sweet wines, and the right side for sweet wines. Not every vineyard get a good Rust.
Is it possible to make a sweet wine in your village?
Mm-hmm.
It
yeah,
is. So
we would make it under.
Yeah.
Yeah, but not that easily like Rust with botrytis. We more get like late harvest. Botrytis you get every few years. Rust is getting constantly botrytis, honestly. The vineyards that they have, because they are closer to the lake.
Yeah, of course.
More foggy character. In our region, every few years it happens. But also it has to be good botrytis. In Rust to get the very good one. If it's come too early, it's the good. If it comes too late, it's not good.
All right. So basically now the experience are the amphoras, right?
In general, yes.
All right.
For finding amphoras for the right vineyard site. It's not about the variety, it's about the vineyard site that has to work.
Yeah, so maybe Robert, the last question.
Yeah, one of the most, I would say, pleasant things about working with wine regarding wine and food pairings. Maybe there's something interesting, specific, like a dish that pairs well with your wine that is maybe only made in Burgenland, something traditional from Burgenland, or maybe even something that you have just tried, which is something surprising to try together with your wines. Maybe you have a experience something like that.
I don't know. I try to translate the word. If you take a typical Burgenland dish, then also for Blaufränkisch and Pinot Blanc, you would be surprised, but paprika chicken works very well. It's Austrian-Hungarian dish. So chicken with paprika sauce, that works amazing with Blaufränkisch also, like you have the Leithaberg or the Pinot Blanc with both sides. So with variety, with wines which is a little bit more tannic and acidic, this is a quite regional dish. Or for Blaufränkisch, especially lamb shoulder. A good lamb shoulder, long, with low temperature made, maybe a bit smoked. That one works very good with Blaufränkisch. International dish. I had last time, I chilled down my Blaufränkisch to 15 degrees. So in general, please treat your Blaufränkisch like you treat your Burgundy. Better to cool than to warm. But I brought it in the glass with 14 degrees and I made a tuna steak. That was a very funny combination. Tuna steak, a lot of white pepper on it. And of course, fleur de sel, so salt on side, that's it. And this was quite interesting that it was very harmony with a young Blaufränkisch that's slightly chilled. Let me think.
I compare
Honestly,
this.
I'm not a good cook. I'm a very good perfection in ordering.
I compare this Pinot Blanc easily with the sea scallops as well.
Oh,
Yes.
fantastic.
Easily. It smells like sea scallops.
It's true. And for rosé, oysters. Oysters was with our rosé because it has also the citric salty character. So there's a perfect combination also with oysters.
Some fresh raw fish as well. Yeah, tartars. I think it should go perfectly.
All the things you can easily make at home. So
yeah, quite easy. Yeah. Not a problem at all. You can order. But I'm now specialized in Austrian takeaways.
Do you have a takeout? A lot of takeouts in Schützen? A lot of restaurants that do takeouts?
No, but I have two.
Okay, so that's good.
One of them was the Taubenkurbel. You know, we have the Relais and Chateau in our village. And one was quite good, the food truck. The son of our Dorfwirtshaus, so the pub from the, he normally makes with a food truck with fantastic quality to good companies, and now he made it in Schützen. Yeah. So actually quite funny, and around here, of course, some restaurant.
I tried that one time, so all good.
Oh, true, we had it, the food truck.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, guys. So yeah, it was quite interesting, and I actually liked a lot of points you mentioned out. Actually, one things I popped into my head was the one that was mentioned in the Condrieu region as well, in France, that you were talking about the chalky soil that your wines don't have, like they have acidity, but it's not a lot, but the perception that it gives on the palate, it's the freshness that it gives. And Viognier grape in Condrieu had the same, how to say, characteristics and explanation from the winemaker as well. So that was one interesting thing. That's actually you were the second winemaker that talks about this, not only acidity like in pH and total acidity, but in like the feel of it and what it gives to the palate. And of course, usually wine and food comparisons are always usually very good for a regular person like us. Yeah, just have a Blaufränkisch with the chicken, paprika chicken. That's always good. Guys, maybe some other comments from your side?
Actually, it's quite funny because I have some chicken paprika on the stove.
Okay.
Oh, it's like really, I do.
Yeah. Hope to see you soon in person.
Me too.
Yeah. And yeah.
Lindy?
I hope that I'm soon able, as Ronald and me was talking, such like 3 or 4 years that I passed by one time. Now we come closer and closer to the time.
I had a fantastic trip with Ronald and the rest of my colleagues when we visited your place. I think it was in 2019. It was a really great experience, and all of us loved how welcoming you were. So and the wines are of course phenomenal, I think, and I think local wine consumers in noble wine do recognize them and they do love them. So I'm really enjoying the rosé, by the way. The bottle is for me, so
It's only a small one.
You need to make a magnum of rosé. Yeah, Georg, thank you much for joining, and I think we will see each other either in online or offline. We'll see, but nevertheless, we will see each other. I would wish everyone a warm and not rainy summer. Of course, not too hot for the winemaker, just about right. And as for the sommeliers, I wish a hot summer and long days of open restaurants this year that will not close on in October or November. So it's a quite important time, but yeah, summer is coming. So drink rosé, Pinot Blanc, Blaufränkisch, and Austria all in all. And yeah, for those who are watching, thank you very much, and cheers to everyone. Ching ching.
Chin chin. Prost.
Chin, chin.
Prost.
See you in life.